You may think, I'm fine, based on your version of yourself, because maybe you're too afraid to get help, maybe you're too naive, maybe too narrow-minded, maybe too stubborn to actually go and get help, to accept that you have an issue that you need to deal with, and you push that onto someone else who has to deal with you. Now that's the issue. Welcome to another episode of Hack the Body, Hack the Mind. My name's Charlie. Today, I want to talk about mental health, but I want to talk about it in a way that I don't know if it's been talked about before. If it has, then I haven't really seen it. Your mental health is your responsibility. If you suffer with anxiety or depression, what you're suffering and what you are going through is your responsibility to deal with. I, for very many years, dealt with depression, and I didn't really understand it. I've dealt with suicidal thoughts, I've dealt with suicidal attempts, I dealt with social anxiety, I've dealt with a little bit of other anxieties which I didn't realise were anxieties. And all of those things I kind of didn't really take control of too much. I understood that I needed to get help. So I understood that whatever I was going through, I shouldn't be feeling, and I didn't want to feel those things. I didn't want to feel the way I did at the time. I made sure that I got the help I needed. That meant going to see a counsellor, that meant making sure my friends were there for me, that meant skipping work on some days, because honestly sometimes if you have ever suffered from depression or you struggle sometimes with the thoughts in your head, you may be dealing with suicidal thoughts, sometimes you can get this thing where you wake up in the morning and it literally feels as if you have been drained of energy. You're almost moving in slow-mo, or as if you do not have the strength to pick anything up, to do actually anything. It's quite difficult to motivate yourself to get out of bed and to have to get up and put that same face on and go to work, especially if you're in a job where you deal with people. So in my old job, I had to deal with customers and things like that. Dealing with those people, having to put that face on, because they're not expecting me to be this person with feelings and emotions and problems. They're expecting me to be Charlie, the guy at work. So you have to put a face on. You have to kind of almost put on this act as such. I say that very, not cliche, but I say that very gently, because you do have to put an act on sometimes to go out, to act as if you are feeling a different way to what you maybe are. Now, mental health is a weird thing because we all deal with it, and we all deal with it on different levels. I've dealt with it at different levels through different periods of my life. So I think the thing is with mental health is a lot of times when we are depressed or when we have anxieties, we either don't deal with it and we just accept it as what it is, and we're just like, well, I'm going to live with this for whatever it is, or we kind of are in denial that we've even got an issue at the time. So if we don't attack it and if we don't do something about it, it can become a real problem actually. Those things will just build up over time until you get a breaking point. And when people say you need to hit rock bottom before things can get better, a lot of times that's because we don't deal with the things day to day. We just kind of let things build up until we are literally suffocated and until it forces us to reach rock bottom. I've been very kind of typical of this in the sense of when I went through a bout of depression in the past. I was young and I didn't really understand it. My parents didn't really understand it. I associated it with the fact that I went through a bad breakup at the time, and I kind of just went, well, that was that, and that was the reason why I was feeling the way I was, and maybe the depression that I was going through was only a cause of that. It's very much can be circumstance-led, as in it can definitely be a circumstance or a situation, maybe a death of a loved one or something like that can push you into these places, periods of depression, which can consume your whole life more than anything, which is kind of the worst bit. The weird thing about it is, like I said, I was very typical because when I went through it in the past, I thought it was that. When I dealt with it, or what I thought would dealt with it, I was like, sweet, don't have to deal with that again. And it came back. And it came back during lockdown, as many of us has suffered a lot with our mental health through lockdown. I'm definitely not the only one, because I know a lot of people. I kind of just had this mindset of, I'm fine, I don't need to see anyone, I don't need to deal with it, I've dealt with it, this is just a relapse, I guess. That mentality can almost create a harder and worse situation because you're not actually dealing with the stuff going on. And the main point of why I'm talking about this is because we push it onto other people. If we don't deal with it, someone else has to deal with us. We may feel like we're acting normal. My girlfriend said to me the other day when we were talking, I said to her, I was like, I probably cry once a week, I reckon, on a weekend, something like that. Weekends when I have the time off, and that's normally when it happens. And she looked at me and she said, you cry every other day. And me, I am genuinely blind to it. I thought I was aware, but I may not actually be aware. I'm quite actually aware, which means that if you aren't and you aren't thinking about it, then you definitely aren't aware. And you're definitely not aware of how you are being and how you are acting, and if your actions, moods, moods are affecting other people. You may think, I'm fine, based on your version of yourself, because maybe you're too afraid to get help, maybe you're too naive, maybe too narrow-minded, maybe too stubborn to actually go and get help, to accept that you have an issue that you need to deal with, and you push that onto someone else who has to deal with you. Now that's the issue. Because we don't take responsibility for our mental health, and we just kind of say, well, I've got this problem, and you don't deal with it. It just creates more problems, and you can end up living a cycle, and you can end up going to drink, you can end up going to drugs, you can end up going to gambling, you can go to sex, you can go to a load of different things to try and fill the hole, to try and make you feel better, to try and numb the pain. Ultimately, it's going to come back up, and it could come back up worse. It could come back up when no one's around to help you. It could come back up and you could harm someone. It could come back up and you could harm yourself. It could come back up and you could do the worst thing possible, maybe take your own life or really badly hurt someone else. Just because we haven't been open enough, because we haven't accepted it, because we haven't just taking a moment to actually realise the life we're living. And I say that because you can literally ruin not your whole life, because at some point you will realise, and at some point you will have to make the change. Maybe when your girlfriend leaves you, or maybe it be because you've had an attempt on your life. It could be one of these situations which wakes you up, because people say they get this like waking up moment. But do you want to let it be something that bad that kind of kicks you up the ass almost and gets you into gear to sorting your shit out? And I say that very bluntly because it's not talked about bluntly. Mental health is a very touchy subject and needs to be dealt with a lot of care and a lot of caution. But it also needs to be dealt with in the way that you are still responsible for you. If you have mental health issues and you have depression or anxiety, it is not someone else's job to make you feel good, to make you feel better. It's someone else's job to actually understand and maybe be a bit more sensitive, but it's your job to sort it out. And what's going to happen is if you don't sort it out, frustration's going to build up and it's going to kick in, and someone's going to get really frustrated with you, either your family, your friends, your girlfriend, because you're not dealing with it. Is it madness or insanity doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? If you live your day-to-day life, if you live your weekly, monthly, yearly life, going through the same shit, dealing with the same problems and not doing anything about it, then that is insanity, that is madness. I talk from a place where I understand. I broke down the whole weekend. I cried from Friday through to Sunday. I wasn't taking responsibility and I wasn't dealing with my things that I needed to deal with. I wasn't giving myself adequate enough time to rest and recover. So I'm talking from a place where I really understand. My life's never, ever going to be the worst out there. And I'm grateful for everything I have. I'm grateful for the life I live. You could have the most money in the world and you can have everything you ever wanted. But if there's this hole inside of you and this underlying low depressed state, are you ever going to be happy? Unfortunately, these things are very hard to deal with on our own, especially if you're in denial. So my biggest advice and biggest takeout from this, I know this is a long one, but my biggest advice and takeout from this is actually do something about it. Speak to a counsellor, speak to a therapist, speak to your friends and family. Start taking responsibility for your actions and start taking responsibility and start going to see someone. Go and see someone, speak about it, work through your issues, whatever they may be. It is really, really hard and it is opening up a can of worms and it is scary and it is really horrible to think about doing, but you would be so brave and you would be so thankful once you do it. So don't let it beat you. Don't fall victim. Don't accept that this is your lot. Do something about it. Understand that you have all of the power. You are strong, you are confident, you are enough. I'm Charlie. This has been Hack the Body, Hack the Mind. You can find us on all different social media platforms, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one.